Hello, I'm Wesley Schultz, Associate Conductor of the North Carolina Symphony, and I'm glad to be joining you again for Behind the Music. This weekend, the Symphony will perform one of the most famous set of violin concertos of all time, Vivaldi's Four Seasons, featuring Principal Second Violin Jacqueline Syed-Wolborski. The Symphony is excited to share this performance on Saturday, January 30th at 8 p.m. I'm especially excited as it is my great delight to conduct this program with my outstanding colleagues. Vivaldi's music overflows with joy and his melodies are infectious. I hope you enjoy the fruits of our efforts in this virtual performance. Now, aside from the opening four notes of Ludwig van Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, it is difficult to think of a piece of music that enjoys as wide a fame and recognition than Antonio Vivaldi's Four Seasons. In addition to my background as a percussionist, I also grew up studying cello, starting when I was 3 years old. It was a tiny cello. But when I was paying my way through college, I would often play in quartets for weddings. And I can hardly remember a wedding I played that didn't include music by Vivaldi or an arrangement of Largo from the Winter Concerto of the Four Seasons. Professional recordings of the Four Seasons number in the hundreds. Every budding violinist cuts his or her teeth learning Vivaldi's picturesque concerto. A further testament to the endurance of this music is that snippets of melodies culled from the seasons have been used endlessly in media. I'm certain there's a TikTok video right now boasting the opening melody to the Spring Concerto. And for good reason. The music is timeless. This music from 300 years ago will continue to be heard for centuries ahead. Antonio Vivaldi was born in Italy in 1678. Vivaldi was the oldest of 6 children, and in his teenage years, he trained for the priesthood, becoming ordained in 1703. Shortly thereafter, however, he left the priesthood to pursue music. His first appointment as a musician was at a girls' school in Venice that cared for orphans. He taught music and eventually began to compose. In his prime, Vivaldi was known all over Europe, especially for his concertos and operas. Toward the end of Vivaldi's life, however, he had largely fallen out of favor. He was known to be incredibly vain. He was boisterous of his accomplishments and of the rich patrons who supported him. He was obsessed with money, and he spent it capriciously. He was so poor upon his death that he was buried in a pauper's grave on hospital burial grounds the same day that he passed. After his death, he was all but forgotten. Interestingly, here there are parallels with J.S. Bach, a contemporary of Vivaldi, and later Mozart. Mozart also spent lavishly and died in debt and having fallen a bit out of favor. Bach, though widely respected in his life, was not widely known outside of Germany. It took almost 100 years for Bach's music to be rediscovered and spread widely. Similarly, Vivaldi's music largely fell into an abyss all the way until the middle of the 20th century, when the Four Seasons finally rocketed to international fame. Vivaldi composed over 500 concertos. About 350 of them are for solo instruments, with 230 being for violin. Despite having composed so many concertos, Vivaldi was not actually the inventor of the genre. It existed well before him. What we do credit Vivaldi with is improving upon and solidifying the mature Baroque concerto. For example, concertos having 3 movements is a credit to Vivaldi. In a Vivaldi concerto, the outer 2 movements tend to be fast in nature. It's where the busiest activity occurs. The middle movement is slow, reflective, and usually much shorter than the outer 2. Fast movements, as in the Four Seasons, use as a cohesive device what is known as a ritornello, a derivative of the Italian ritornare, meaning to return or reappear. In practice, it's a segment of music, usually scored for the full ensemble, that kicks off the movement and then reappears throughout the movement, either in full or in abridgment, and often varied. Alternating with the ritornello are episodes, which are solo passages for the violin. With Vivaldi, ritornellos and fast movements often become shorter as a movement unfolds, and episodes become longer. The material between a ritornello and an episode often has little to do with one another. The full ensemble has its melody, and the soloist is made free to fly in a different direction. The slow movements in Vivaldi's concertos have similar traits, as you'll hear in this performance. Slow movements are often quite short. They're also usually very plain in their notation. Vivaldi will sometimes use a single rhythmic motive and put it on repeat for the entire duration of a movement. Other times, the music is simply block changes of harmony without a single vigorous rhythm present. The soloist often appears on top of the full ensemble sound in a way that sounds improvised and otherworldly. The goal in the end is to achieve beauty and splendor through economy and subtlety. So now that we have talked a bit about Vivaldi's background, the kind of music he wrote, and the basic arrangement and design of his concertos, let's talk a little bit more specifically about the Four Seasons. The Four Seasons are actually 4 individual concertos grouped together. When they were published in 1725, they were part of a collection of 12 concertos for solo violin and string ensemble, including continuo instruments such as harpsichord. Many of the concertos in this collection have descriptive titles. Vivaldi did this intentionally. He means for you, the listener, to hear in the music a sort of story or evocation of an extra musical idea. The first 4 concertos in this collection of 12 are titled respectively Spring, Summer, Autumn, and Winter. In modern times, they're often played as a set, thus the Four Seasons title, though they can absolutely be played on their own. Each of these 4 concertos is comprised of 3 movements in the fast, slow, fast design. And unique to these concertos is that each one has an accompanying sonnet, very possibly written by Vivaldi himself. Now, the inclusion of poetry is a very special aspect of this music. For most classical music, listeners are on their own to decide if the music at hand is supposed to represent something beyond the notes themselves. This is one of the magical aspects of music. But here, we have Vivaldi telling us exactly what is happening. He's painting an entire scene for us to imagine ourselves in. Vivaldi went so far when composing the music as to write in the parts the lines of poetry next to the musical events they described. In fact, there are some indications in the music that aren't even in the poems. For example, in Summer, there are extra notations telling the musicians how some lines represent laziness in the face of extreme heat. Obviously, Vivaldi heard about North Carolina summers, as well as various types of wind gusts that blow the musical lines upward and downward. Essentially, Vivaldi gave us one of the earliest forms of program notes. So in the Four Seasons, we have delightful music illustrating the wonders of the world. We have bird songs, including the cuckoo, turtle dove, and goldfinch, hunting horns, frivolity. We have thunderstorms, village dances, leaves rustling, wind blowing, bagpipes, scorching summer heat, chattering teeth, icy feet, numb toes, and one very insistent sheepdog. I encourage you to find the poems and read them before listening to the North Carolina Symphony's performance. Then, just let the music wash over you as these events are brought to life by our musicians. Thank you for joining me in this discussion of Antonio Vivaldi and his pictorial Four Seasons. The symphony and I look forward to sharing this music with you, featuring our own principal second violin, Jacqueline Syed-Wilborski. The concert streams on Saturday, January 30th at 8 p.m. and will be available for 20 days following. Thank you for your support of the North Carolina Symphony, and I will see you on stage.